G'day VanFam and welcome back to another video. This week we're going to do something a little bit different, something I haven't seen too many YouTubers do before, probably because nobody likes to own up to their mistakes. But I think by talking about our mistakes we can provide a lot of insights, and that's going to be really helpful for anyone that's planning on entering the caravan lifestyle. We've been on the road now for coming up to just on 3 years. And we've made our fair share of mistakes on the road, and some of them have been quite costly. Unfortunately, one of the most effective ways to learn in life is to learn from your mistakes. But luckily for you guys, we've got this YouTube channel and we're going to share some of our biggest mistakes with you, and hopefully you can learn from them too. So Mel and I have compiled a list of all of our mistakes that we've made that relate to our life in a caravan. Talking about your mistakes, it's not really an easy thing to do, so I want to add a little bit of a caveat in here. If you feel the need to leave some comments about this video after watching it, please be kind and respectful, because what we're about to do is not an easy thing to do. So let's jump in the hot seat and we'll go through a list of the biggest mistakes that we've made in our caravan life. Number 1, understand caravan weights. So I'm going to tackle this one because it's kind of my responsibility, and Mel doesn't really know.
I have a basic understanding of, we shouldn't be overweight, but Brett can explain it much better than I can, so I'm going to let him take the lead.
So this mistake actually happened long before we even got on the road. We had an old MN Triton, that was our old original vehicle, and they have a tow capacity of something like 3.1 tons, I think it is. And we picked ourselves a smaller caravan. So our caravan has an ATM of 2750. That is, it can't weigh any more than 2750 without being overweight. And that MN Triton was supposed to be able to tow 3.1 tons. So we figured we should be sweet. We should be able to tour around Australia with our original car because we picked a small van.
Yeah, but
basically, that maximum tow capacity that manufacturers state these cars can tow is absolute nonsense. Now, it's not really in the scope of this video for me to explain why that is, but in short, once you factor in all the gear that you're going to be putting in your car if you're going to start touring, there's just no way these cars can tow anywhere near what that maximum tow capacity they say they can do is. And it wasn't until after we'd spent some money on the suspension in our old MN Triton that we realized that the MN Triton was just never ever going to cut it as a potential tow vehicle for us.
Which is kind of a bummer, because we didn't want to have to spend money getting a new vehicle, so it was a bit of a shame.
Yeah, it was also a bummer because I really liked my MN Triton. So to summarize our mistake, we didn't really understand caravan weights and tow vehicle capabilities when we were choosing our caravan and our tow vehicle. That ended up costing us
not only time but money.
Yeah. So if I had my time again, I would make sure I have a really good understanding of caravan weights and car weights and tow vehicles and how that all works. And in an ideal world, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story now. This is how I would do it if I could do it again in an ideal world. The first thing I would do is I would pick my tow vehicle. And I'd have a rough idea of the caravan that I was going to pick as well and how heavy that was, and I'd make sure that the tow vehicle was most likely going to be capable of doing that. I'd then fit out the tow vehicle for touring. I'd then weigh it once it's built to see just how heavy it is. I could then subtract that GVM from the GCM, and using those numbers I could know exactly how heavy a caravan could be that I could purchase, and then I would procure my caravan. Obviously, for practicality reasons, it's virtually impossible because it takes like a year and a half to get a new caravan manufactured these days. This is just in an ideal world what you would do. Failing that, just make sure you've got a really good understanding of car and caravan weights and how they all work together before you start making purchases. Just make sure you have a really good understanding of these things.
So I guess don't do what we did. We had a car, we purchased a caravan at a caravan show, and then realised it didn't work. So moving on to number 2, use the marriage saver. This mistake came only 3 months into our travels. This was at a caravan park, and there were a lot of reviews complaining about how tight the sites were, and it's not easy to park it. So the caravan park offered a marriage saver, which is basically a little tractor that would come in and park your van for you.
But I'm a big tough guy and I don't need that. I could get it in there myself. To cut a long story short, we ended up spearing the caravan on a pole that was sticking out onto the road. we did some serious damage.
We thought the trip was over.
We thought everything was over. We thought that could have been the end of it. That could have been a completely total van. Thankfully, the thing was fixable and we were insured, and it really wasn't the end of the world. We were only out of action for 2 or 3 weeks at the time, so it ended up not being too bad for us. But yeah, going forward, and it's happened a couple of times now, if a caravan park offers a marriage saver, I'm not a big tough guy anymore. I'm like, yep,
totally, let's do it.
You guys want to park the van for us? Sweet. Take it, put it on the site. You don't have to be a hero. There is a reason why they offer those things in these tight little sites, and that's because the little tractors are far more effective
more maneuverable as well.
At putting a caravan into these tight little sites that some of these caravan parks in busy areas that are really small, that's what they do. So yeah, use the marriage saver.
We'll throw in another little bit of advice on how this incident kind of happened. It was kind of my fault. I was caught up having a bit of a chin wag with someone, and I wasn't looking around completely at all the potential issues and subsequently the pole.
She wasn't spotting.
I wasn't spotting. So to fix this situation, now I get out of the van, I get out of the car and have a handheld radio to Brett so I can say stop, go, and tell him of anything that's coming up, low branches or whatever. So
even on easy sites, we just do this every time.
Yeah,
we arrive, we look at it, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty easy, but Mel will still get out, she will hold the radio and she'll just communicate and help me get it in there safely.
It has taken a bit of work on our communication to
that could be a whole episode on itself. Training your wife how to spot and direct caravan reversing, but we're not going to get into that here.
So it definitely has helped in future situations, and definitely something that we would recommend doing. Even for those pull-in sites, you never know what kind of things might just pop out. So definitely use that situation.
All right, moving on to number 3. Lower your tire pressures. Don't be lazy. So we made this mistake.
You made this mistake fairly recently.
So I made this mistake quite recently.
Because I communicated what we should do and you were like, nah, it'll be fine.
Basically, to break it down, if you remember when we were doing the Gibb River Road, we broke our starter motor. We were about 300 kilometres out from finishing the Gibb River Road at the time, and we made the decision to just shoot out, head into Broome and fix the starter motor, because last thing we wanted to do after finally getting it started was not be able to get it started again.
Yeah.
But we ended up fixing the starter motor and decided we had enough time to go back and finish what we missed. Now when we came out of the Gibb, the conditions were incredible. We could do 70, 80 k's an hour. It was like driving on bitumen. It was great. So I said on the way back in, I'm not going to drop pressures because
But I said we probably should because it's the Gibb River Road, like.
You can keep blaming me or what? This is going to come back to haunt you further into the video. So we didn't drop pressures and the road was all right to start, and then we hit a really rough patch of corrugations. And then it got better, then we hit another rough patch of corrugations, and then it got better, and every time I was like, I should probably get out and drop the tyre pressures. But I didn't, and we drove the 300 kilometres back into where we finished to finish what we wanted to do, and we didn't drop tyre pressures, and that was a big mistake.
That was a
So the list of damage that we did to our caravan because I was lazy and didn't lower the tyre pressures is we cracked one of our water tanks. You know, on a water tank they're like two components. There's basically two halves and they're put together on a seam. It cracked across the seam, so we were basically losing about half of the water out of the caravan.
And you know, water is life when you're off grid.
Water's pretty important, that's right, we need that fixed.
And the second thing was the table completely jumped off the pedestal and was like on the couch, so that was pretty bad. But
fixable. The next one wasn't fixable. One of our lithium batteries, and a lithium battery is worth around $1,000, died.
Yeah, don't know why.
I don't know what happened. Components inside must have got bounced around and damaged, so we lost a lithium battery.
We had soap come off the dispenser and it was all through the bathroom and it was just everywhere.
It was a complete disaster. So learn from our mistakes, and look, I don't normally make this mistake. I will usually, if not usually, I will always lower tire pressures. There were circumstances that came about which caused us to not lower the tire pressures, But yeah, learn from our mistake. Never be lazy. Lower your tire pressures. And I'll actually go on and talk about that a little bit further. And this isn't a mistake that I've made, but it's a mistake that we see all the damn time. Whenever we're beach camping, people bring their caravans onto the beach and they have them drop their tire pressures. And they go down. Tire pressures are very important when you're doing beach camping and beach driving. Don't go on and be like, I won't lower my tire pressures, I'll just see what happens. Just drop your tire pressures before you go on the beach.
I know it's such an effort to put them back up.
And drop them.
But it's definitely worth it to not have to dig yourself out of trouble, because it's a lot of effort to do that.
And it's bloody embarrassing as well. So yeah, tire pressures are important. If you're ever going off-grid, off-road, if you're going to do some corrugations, if you're going to go on the sand, lower your tire pressures. It's not that hard. It's just part of this life. In fact, you should probably enjoy it. This is why we're doing it. Okay, moving on to our next mistake. Number 4.
Strap your fridge door. It doesn't matter how well your van is built or who builds it, to be honest. They all outsource certain components to other companies. So fridges, for example, they're all built by 1 or 2 companies out there. So basically our fridge freezer is all in one with one door. A lot of other vans are split into the 2-door kind of systems.
And the negative of having your all-in-one door is it's one big component that's really heavy.
And the freezer kind of like hits the door if it's bounced around, so that adds extra pressure to the door. So really what we want to say is, when you're hitting all these rough roads and corrugations, like, your door is under tremendous stress and being bounced around, so strap your door.
Because ours fell off. And as Mel said, we've got friends that have got the separate ones. Like, it doesn't matter if you have the all-in-one like us, or if you've got a separate fridge freezer, you need to strap your door because they fall off. They fall off regularly, and I've never heard anybody really talk about that before. So there's a bit of advice for you.
It's a big problem that happens. So for us, this happened 3 months into our travels, just after we got our spear hole fixed in the side of our van. So it wasn't a good time for us. The fridge door fell off when we were doing the corrugations up at Cape York, and we were in the middle of nowhere, so all our food went bad. We were lucky that a place we were staying offered dinner, because otherwise we would have had no food to eat. So this was kind of a really bad situation for us. In order to circumvent this from happening again, we installed 2 little eye hooks, and we occy strapped the fridge kind of on an angle so that it's secured. And since then, it has never fallen off, unless we've forgotten to strap it.
No, it's never fallen off, but we never forget to strap
it. We never
it.
forget to strap it. Yeah, it's on our checklist now. So
even if we're not doing corrugations, we strap the fridge door.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely strap your fridge, find a way to secure it, because you don't want to have to replace all that food, and the smell that comes out of that fridge was disgusting. So definitely strap your fridge.
Mistake number 5, check for the correct fuel. This one's a bit of a no-brainer. You obviously want to make sure you're putting diesel in your diesel engine or petrol in your petrol engine. But I stuffed this up in South Australia. We were at a petrol station and I made the mistake of putting about 60 litres of unleaded into our diesel engine.
Yes. Thankfully, I noticed on the receipt when I was inputting it into my fuel app, because I record how much we pay and the kilometres.
If you go and do a whole bunch of kilometres with the wrong fuel in your car, you can completely ruin your engine. So luckily for us, Mel kind of picked it up before we went anywhere.
And we had a very heated discussion between ourselves.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna, I can do it, I can suck it out. Mel was like, we pay for our ACQ, we're gonna use it. It was...
and it worked out well, because what happened was the guy came out, he knew the mechanic that was attached to the fuel station. He rang him and said they could fit us in the next day.
So all it cost us was a night camped up on the side of a road next to... Actually, it was a brilliant camp. There was a wicked park on the other side of the road. There was toilets at the park.
So yeah,
it was better than a caravan park. And
it was free.
Nobody came and said anything to us, and if they did, we had a pretty reasonable reason to be there. But yeah, so... don't make that mistake. But this can happen because when you're traveling around Australia, first of all, different states seem to have different colours. Like, I made this mistake because the unleaded pump was grey, which is pretty close to green. And in Queensland, we don't have grey unleaded pumps.
No, yeah.
And the diesel pump at this station was way off around the other side in some other place. And we didn't see it. So I was like, well, this one must be the diesel. And I put it in. I didn't pay too much attention to it.
And because you are visiting so many different petrol stations, unmanned, manned,
yeah,
they're all different colours.
You don't go to the same place, do you?
Yeah,
So
and sometimes the diesel pump is way over the other side and everything's right under where you'd normally pull in.
So to summarise our mistake, we put petrol in our diesel engine. Don't make that mistake. Pay attention to it. Mel and I actually make a bit of a game of it now. Whenever we go to a petrol station, we both look at it and we're like, diesel? Diesel. It's diesel. We'll never make that mistake again. It's like I said at the intro to this video. You learn from these mistakes, your mistakes, and you don't make those mistakes again.
Even like as recently as like 2 weeks ago, we pulled up and we're like, hang on, this is unleaded. Where's the diesel?
Well, because we double checked. We were playing our diesel game.
Yeah, so definitely make a game of it. I mean, try not to make our mistake, but definitely double check for sure.
And it is surprisingly easy to do. All right, moving on to our next mistake.
Mistake number 6, pay attention to the seasons. So we still get this wrong.
3 years on the road and we still find ourselves south in winter and north in summer suffering the heat.
Or the cold.
Yeah.
I mean, the seasons sneak up on you, and sometimes there's just not enough time to explore a region.
It's not sometimes. There is just not enough time to explore Australia. You need to migrate north and south as the seasons change, and we keep getting it wrong.
Yeah.
It's a mistake that we're still making. We made it just this year. We were in the Ningaloo in 45-degree days
and it was
when it was too windy, which
yeah.
actually brings up another point. There is more to it than just being north in summer. No, south in summer and north in winter. There's seasons, like the locations that you're going to go to. So the big ticket things that you're going to do, you want to be doing some research to find out when the best season is to do it.
And sometimes that's even not correct. So we booked the Ningaloo thinking that we were going in the best season. We booked 6 months in advance. And it turned out to be hot and windy. And
I would say that we made a mistake. If you go and Google when's the best time to visit the Ningaloo, they say not from September to December, because that's when it's most windy, which is when we happen to go to the Ningaloo.
But
we got it right in sometimes, for example, the Gibb River Road, and also when we did Cape York. You want to hit those things really early in their season because there's still going to be water in the waterways.
Yeah, the roads have just been graded.
The roads will be in better condition. So basically your big ticket items on the locations that you want to see as you're travelling around Australia, it pays to do some research so that you can hit them in the right season, because we continue to make this mistake.
Yeah, we do.
We also make the mistake of not leaving to go north soon enough, because we travel slower than a lot of people and we like to see things really thoroughly.
We also like to not have to come back to places that we're not totally in love with. So if we want to just bang out of town and do all the things around it, we don't want to necessarily have to come back to that place. We'd rather go somewhere else. So we're trying to squeeze everything
because
in.
We travel so slowly, we find that we end up being too far north in summer and stuck down south in winter. It's something that we really want to improve on. But it's not just us. Like, we were at Haydn and I was talking with some new travellers and he was telling me, yeah, I'm planning to do the Eyre Peninsula, then I'm going to do the York Peninsula, then we're going to go down and we're going to do Tasmania. I was like, when are you getting on the thing to Tasmania? He's like, January. I was like, mate, that's winter. It's not going to be nice in Tasmania in winter. You need to accept that you can't see it all unless you travel extremely quickly. You can't do all of the things in a season. If you're going to do the lifestyle like us and do it over several years, so you've got time to see everything, our advice would be to plan to do 1 to 2 things in north and south per season. So I would say, for example, do southern WA and the Eyre Peninsula, and then plan to head north. You could go up the Great Northern Highway and go up to Darwin, or you could go across and you could go up the east coast and you could do Cape York, across the Savannah Way, back down the highway, and then you could do the York Peninsula and Tasmania in a season. You just can't do it all in a season. There's not enough time, is there?
No, but it's always nice to have something to come back to. Leave something unfinished so you have a reason to come back.
That is a brilliant piece of advice that we learned very early in our travels from another very seasoned traveller. Leave things undone so you've got a reason to go back. All right, moving on to our next mistake. Number 7, check your suspension and tyres regularly. Okay, we've made it to the last mistake that we're going to share with you guys.
So far.
You should check your tyres and your suspension regularly. I wasn't doing this. Now, I'll add in a little bit of a caveat that I don't see myself as a car guy. I have never been a car guy. In my previous life, if something went wrong with the car, I would have a mechanic fix it. These days, I'm becoming far more hands-on. As part of what you do in this lifestyle, you need to learn. But I wasn't checking my tyres and suspension regularly, and it wasn't until we were at a point where something could have gone catastrophic before I noticed an issue, because I wasn't doing that. So basically what happened for us was one of our tyres on the van was wearing right down to the steel and just on one side. And that's a clear indication that you've really got something going wrong. But because I wasn't checking things regularly, I didn't notice until we were at a point where that tyre was absolutely ruined.
And we had to change it to the spare.
Yeah, so I changed it to the spare, and then I put a post up on Instagram and I said, hey, you should check your tyres regularly. Look what happened to ours. And a good Samaritan from our Instagram followers pointed out in one of the photos that we actually had something far more sinister going on. The swing arm on the suspension had cracked, and because that had cracked, the van tyre wasn't sitting right, it was sitting out to the side, causing that really unusual wear. But that actually could have been quite catastrophic. Had the swing arm continued to crack, it could have been a very, very bad scenario. So I was incredibly thankful to the Good Samaritan that told me about my issue. But in hindsight, it doesn't take a genius to investigate what's going on here. If you've got some poor wear going on your tyres, you might have something going on that needs investigating. And it's not hard to notice a big crack in your suspension system. And even me, as a non-mechanically minded person, had I got under there and looked regularly, I probably would have been able to spot this. So this is a mistake that we've now rectified. I now look at the tyres on the van and look at the tyres on the car like every 2 weeks, just to make sure that things aren't looking untowards. In fact, back in Exmouth, I noticed there was some cupping going on one of the tyres. So we put it in for a service. The alignment was out, and that's the reason why one of the tyres was cupping. It is not that hard to do, even if you're not mechanically minded. A quick little bit of research on the internet, like I pop up this little thing here that I found that can show you if your tyres aren't wearing properly, what the possible causes are. You can teach yourself that really quickly. So
even the kids, we've taught them to use like a 20-cent piece to check the tyre tread. So, just all these little tricks, you can get the family involved and everyone looking.
Keeping a good eye on your tyres and your driveline, climbing under the van, just making sure that nothing unusual isn't happening. It can save you a lot of heartache in the long run.
Save from anything bad happening as well.
And it's a worthwhile thing, and that is a mistake of mine, thinking I don't know anything about this, so I'm not going to do this. You can teach yourself, you should do it. So a mistake of ours that cost us, in a way, it cost us a tyre. It didn't cost us an accident, thankfully. But yeah, can be fixed and solved really easily by just simply paying attention to what's happening with your tyres.
Alright guys, well that's enough of our embarrassing mistakes from our time living on the road so far. We hope that this helps you avoid some of our mistakes, and if you like the video, please hit the like button and please be kind in the comments, because it's easy to do to make these mistakes.
But it's not really easy to talk about. We also try and put out a video every week sharing our adventures around Australia, where we share heaps of tips and tricks about this lifestyle. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and maybe checking out some of our other videos.
Don't forget, we'll see you on the next adventure, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. YouTube thinks you might like this video here. Click the thumbnail the arrow is pointing at. You could also subscribe by clicking the Trippin' logo.